Hey, this is Abby. This is normally my vlog, but I decided to do something a little bit different again. I'm going to be doing a series of tutorials. So I will start with the disclaimer that I am in no way probably qualified to be doing art tutorials. So I'm just going to go based off of what I know how to do, and hopefully you can derive something from that. So today's tutorial is going to be on shading, and we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to go ahead and shade a ball, and then I'm going to move on to shading a person's face to sort of show you how the technique basically passes over. So starting out, just imagine this is a ball that is laying on a flat piece of paper. There's our flat piece of paper. The first thing we're going to want to do is pick our light source. So I'm going to say, first I'm going to make a new layer, and then I'm going to say my light source is right here. So that means that we're going to be shining down in this direction on the ball. So since that's our light source, we're going to say our spotlight on the ball is going to be right about there. So that's where we're going to take our highlight from. So having that information now, we can go in and pick our color that we're going to choose to shade with, and I'm just going to do black and white just to make it easy. So let's go with a gray, get ourselves a pretty decent sized brush. I'm going to go with a round brush and turn my opacity down to like 5134. And then what I want to do is select the inside of the ball. And you can also do this by like using this little lock button if you're using Photoshop, and it'll lock the opacity, lock you out of changing anything that's outside of that ball area, like so. That brush is a little small. Let's go a little bit bigger. And let's go bigger than that. Okay, so we know our light source is pinpoint light, and we're somewhere right here. So what we're going to do is go around that area very lightly and start off with our shadow. And we're just going to go all the way around the ball until we've got one smooth shadow that's the same color all around. Okay. Now we've got our shadow, and that's just the beginnings of our shadow. I don't like how small this pinpoint light is, so what I'm going to go ahead and do is take my eraser and make it a fuzzy brush, make it kind of huge, not that huge, not that small. That looks good. Turn the opacity down, turn the flow down, and just widen that little spot a little bit more. You may want to pick up your brush a couple of times just to make sure that you're getting a good even splotch of white where your light is being pointed at. So now that we have this, we can switch back to our regular brush, and we're going to make it darker the further away from the pinpoint light that we are. So we're going to go around the outsides without picking up our brush, and then pick up our brush and go around the outside again, this time closer to the edge, and repeat the same thing until we've got a pretty dark edge here. So now we have what looks like a gray ball. I'm going to use my eraser again a little bit just to bring out more of that pinpoint light. So there's something missing here still. Light reflects, so especially in the shadow. So let's go ahead and add a shadow to our ball. We're just going to go ahead and put that down here because we know that our light is in front of it. And inside of that shadow, something special happens. We get a little bit of a reflection from the paper onto the ball down here at the edge. And the same thing goes for the paper. You'll get a little bit of a reflection on the paper from the ball. So you'll get your reflection there, and then you'll also get a reflection on the ball itself. So you want to go very lightly with your eraser, and if you screw up, you can just go back over it again with your well, if I hadn't changed my color, you can go back over it again with your gray just to darken it back up again. And now we have our reflected light. And we can keep working on this to make it look cleaner and cleaner. I recommend doing the shadow on a separate layer so that way you can continue to use that trick with the little lock button, because once you color on the outside of the ball, that becomes part of that lock layer, and then you can no longer lock your opacity. You're going to have to use your wand tool or something like that to select just the ball. So now we have our shadow and our little bit of light reflection. So those are the basics. We'll get a little bit more reflection going on there. And you just want to tinker with this until it looks just right. And, you know, that's however long you want to tinker with it. I don't want to play around with it for too long. So we're just going to go ahead and say that's our ball. And that's pretty much how you do shading. You pick your light source, and then everything further away from the light source gradually gets darker, and then you add your reflected light. So now that we've done that, we can move on to a face. Now, the face is going to be a little bit different because there's a lot of different points of light that you can get hit here. So again, we're going to use our light to be right there. And what I find easiest is to go ahead and outline where my light is going to be. So I know my light is going to be on my forehead. Oops. You know what? Let's make this on a separate layer. And we'll put that below that layer. So I know where my light is shining. So I'm going to go ahead and add my shadows in everywhere where the light is not pointed. And you basically just want to go through and do it this way. You do the same thing kind of like what we did with the ball. You say that's my pinpoint light right there, and I'm further away from that light, so now I have my shadow. And this ear is terrible, but it'll do for these purposes. And just kind of go over the whole thing to around your pinpoint light. And then we'll worry about adding details here in a minute. So we'll do the same thing. We'll make it darker the further away it is. You'll notice I'm coloring outside of the lines here. That's a no-no for me, but I can fix that pretty quick with my wand tool and a little bit of delete. If my wand tool wants to work. There it goes. And delete. Okay. Now that we have a base layer, we can go ahead and lock our opacity. Okay, and now we want to go in and make sure that pinpoint light is outlined correctly. So we're getting light in the right places. So we want to go in with our eraser and kind of pull away some of that color where our pinpoint light is. Now we don't really need that anymore because we kind of know where we are. So we want to make sure that we follow the contours of the face when we're doing this. And you can also, instead of using an eraser, just use white brush, which I'm going to do from here on out because it's easier for me just to hit the X button. And then you just kind of want to go in and add shadows where there would be shadows. So like right here below the eye, we would have some shadow. Because of the shape of the eye. Probably wouldn't be quite that much shadow. I'm going off of no reference here though, so. And you just kind of want to fill in a little bit more. Make it darker where your light is not shining, like on the cheekbones and on your chin, and especially on the neck. The neck's going to be pretty dark here because our light is pretty far away. And then we just want to go in and go wild with the details. So what I like to do at this point, once I have my shadows blocked out and stuff, I call this my blocky monster phase. Usually I do this with a hard brush, not a soft brush, because I like to have hard edges where my features are going. But since I'm not using a reference, I'm just kind of winging it right now. That actually wouldn't be lit up. We knew our nose would have a little bit of light, but on the end of the nose we wouldn't, because that part of the nose is facing downward. And this part of the face would be pretty dark. So anyway, this is what I like to call my blocky monster phase, and what I like to do from here is go in with a hard brush that's kind of a smaller size with the same flow and opacity and start drawing in the details. So I do a little bit of scribbling, Oh, that's my eraser, not my brush. And 31, 34 should be fine. And I just do little concentric circles and just sort of flip between the two colors to do some blending. And I'm only going to really do the eye here, just to sort of give you an idea of how I do that. I think this part of the eye would actually be lit up a little bit. So let's give her a little bit of light right here. And you can see with the smaller brush, you can pull out a lot more detail. So we'll just go ahead and say that's good. And underneath the eye here, we're going to be a lot darker. So we want to make sure that we get that reflected in our image. And we'll just continue doing small concentric circles until we get something that looks something like skin. And sometimes we change that color up by adding like different varying shades of gray instead of using the same gray and white over and over again, which is what I'm doing right now. And we want to make sure that we got something for her naturally occurring crow's feet. I'm sure she doesn't appreciate me saying that she has crow's feet, but we all have them. And then when we have something where it looks kind of like whoopsie boo boo kind of deal, we could just go back to our larger brush and kind of work that back in. So that that's well blended. And I am actually hitting my switch color button, but it's not working for me. Okay. Now we're a little bit better blended in. And you can continue working with this brush or a small brush of your choice, or even like a different brush that has a texture drawn to it. This is just the way that I do it. And the more you work at it, the more it looks like skin. And we're just going to go ahead with our whoopsie brush. Make that a bigger whoopsie brush. And blend that guy in. And let's make our light spot lighter, so we can tell that's definitely our light source. She's going to have a little bit of a dip in her forehead right here, where your forehead bones go. I don't know what those are called. So I'll just call them forehead bones. And let's see, the top of the cheekbone will come up here. So we want to make sure that we account for that too. Going into the ear. Making sure that our dark spots are dark enough and our light spots are light enough. Add a little bit for her cheek here. And then let's go in and do some detailing on the nose. Now I've up until now just been using like a gray. So now we're going to go in and hit it with some darker colors. And this will give it more definition. Because right now we look a little bit flat. And never be afraid to go too dark. You can go really, really dark on a lot of these images and they'll still turn out pretty good. But that being said, also don't use black. I know I'm using black right now because I'm doing a black and white image. But when you're using doing a colored image, you don't want to use black. You want to use something that's kind of off black, that has color to it. So like you want to choose something that's in the color range over here. Basically something that's got some kind of tint to it. But for the purposes of this exercise, we don't need to do that. We just want to go in and make sure that we have our details nice and dark where they're supposed to be dark, and our details light where they're supposed to be light. Now there's also going to be reflected light on the face, so we don't get to get away from that just yet. But I'm not going to do anything with the reflected light on this. I'm just going to go over until we get something that looks semi-decent. Because this is a tutorial image, it's probably not going to look the best. Let's get zoomed in real good right here, and then really get our blacks in there. And the more definition that we get in here, the more realistic we're going to end up looking in the end. Because we really want this to have volume, and we can't create volume without dark colors. It's a little bit of that reflected light that I said I wasn't going to do. Just gonna do the lips in a dark color here. And let's extend a little bit on that black so that we don't look like we've got a straight hard line. And we want to make sure that we add the little details on the face. So going back to a gray color, we're going to smooth out that black. And we want to make sure that we're getting the shadows around the eye. There we go, and we've got more of a realistic vibe going on now. We've got depth at least, not necessarily realistic. Having a black and white photo to go off of definitely helps, which I do not have, as I've mentioned before. Another really neat trick you can use is to rely heavily on your color picker. So if you have a color and you need to match the shade of something that's nearby, or you just need to quickly pick up a shade, just use the color picker. And that makes blending so much faster. My surface is lacking a little bit, so I'm gonna have some trouble getting this to look right, but your mileage may vary. So let's go over here and kind of color pick our way around this brow that looks ridiculous right now. blend it in really good. And tiny concentric circles. Don't forget to use the tiny concentric circles. Those are your friend. Especially when you're working on skin. The cool thing about using the color picker is you can get midway points between colors. And I'll show you that in just a second. So, say you have two colors here. You have black and you have a gray color. What you can do is you can overlap them. If you have your opacity turned down, you can see that middle color right there. You can go ahead and pick that and then overlay it again. And then you get a new middle color. You can pick that and then overlay it again. And this is how you blend colors in Photoshop effectively. So that's how you get varying degrees of gray very quickly. I'm not liking this side of the eye, so I'm just gonna kind of smudge it a little bit. I'm going to use a bigger brush here to sort of blend my colors in. There we go. Let's do the same thing with the outside of the head here. And we're just quickly going and adding detail. So there you go. You have a shaded face, which probably is not the best shaded face in the world, but it is a shaded face. And that's sort of the basics of shading. So I would recommend practicing with the ball and getting the hang of slowly layering your colors so that they go from light to dark. And then once you have the hang of that, you should be pretty well good to go. So that is my shading tutorial. I'm gonna try and do like a color tutorial next maybe. I don't know. Leave something in the comments and I'll figure it out from there. But thank you for tuning in, and good luck.